everybody, and welcome to yet another exciting virtual event hosted by the ITL Network Society. So I want to welcome today our guest speakers, our moderator, and all our participants listening today. And on a warm note, I would like to, as you all are aware, that the ITL Network Society supports and tries to focus mostly on the international community. Therefore, our hearts go out to those in countries that have been severely affected by the pandemic, especially India, Pakistan, and Brazil, and not forgetting our very own Canada. So everyone, stay in, stay safe, and rest assured that the ITL network will continuously keep dishing out hot topics, discussions, virtual events, resources that would support and assist internationally trained lawyers and graduates in assessing and transitioning into the Canadian legal sphere. So without further ado, I would like to welcome you all and welcome to today's event. I hope you enjoy it and take out something today. Over to you, Kenny.
Thanks, Cynthia, and welcome to all our participants to the Licensing Pathway event. So I would like to briefly read the profile of our moderator for today's event. So Ife Adioba is an internationally trained lawyer, and our core expertise spans across AML and regulatory compliance advisory, development of compliance programs, policies and procedures, risk assessments, transaction monitoring, suspicious activity reporting, global sanctions screening, amongst others. Ife was recognized in the International Financial Law Review 2018 for attention to detail and excellent corporate support. Ife is the AML lead at Dentons Canada LLP, where she brings to bear her years of experience as a lawyer alongside her expertise in compliance. In her spare time, Ife enjoys mentoring and coaching young people. She is the founder of the Light Hill Group, a nonprofit initiative focused on supporting children and teenagers. Everyone, can you please join me in welcoming our moderator for today, Ife Adeoba. Over to you, Ife.
Thank you very much, Kenny. I appreciate that, and I'm very honored to be here. Not just honored to be here, but to be here with very brilliant minds, extremely brilliant minds, and you all are going to find out in a bit. I'm going to briefly introduce them and they will begin to speak, so we get right into this as quickly as we can. I cannot give you all of their profiles, but I can say a few things about them just so you know who and who is in the room, and we'll get right into this. First, let me just say that the goal of the session is for us to understand what the different licensing pathways are in Canada, for you to have some of your questions answered, maybe not all, but some of your questions answered. We'll encourage you to use the chat room. Let this be extremely interactive. Let's know what's on your mind, put it in the Q&A chat box so that we can know exactly what you're thinking, and perhaps what you're saying might also set the tone or give some context to our conversation. So our goal today is to have the panelists tell you their stories, and hoping that you will also find yourself in some of the things that they're saying. I want to say that everyone is in different places right now, not necessarily in terms of location, but in terms of what your goals are as an individual. So it's important that you recognize that what we're doing here today is not to compare and say, oh, this licensing pathway is better than the other, but what we're saying is you might be able to find yourself in either of the different licensing pathways that we're talking about. What works for you as a person, what works for you, speaking of where you are right now in your life and in your career. So I'm going to just touch on the profiles of our esteemed panelists today very quickly. I'll start with Emeka, who is on my left. Emeka is an internationally trained lawyer. He was called to the Nigerian bar 10 years plus ago. He has several years of experience in securities regulation. Currently, Emeka is undergoing and is almost concluding his law practice program at the Ryerson University. Emeka is currently undertaking his program, the other part of his LPP program, and he's going to speak to that at the Bank of Montreal, where he supports the legal and regulatory compliance team. Thank you so much for joining us, Emeka.
Thank you, Ife. I'm glad to be here.
Great. I will introduce Seun Smith. Seun was called to the Nigerian bar over 6 years ago, and she moved to Canada. Some years ago. Seun is going to tell us about that. Seun was assessed to write 5 exams due to her background coming from a common law jurisdiction. And interestingly, Seun wrote all 5. You know, when I said we're in the room with very brilliant minds, you will understand what I mean. Seun wrote all 5 in just one diet, and she cleared it all. So that's Seun for you. Seun is a partner in the NCA Guide team, and you will find out more about NCA Guide if you look up their website. Seun is currently a licensing candidate with the Law Society of Ontario. She's articling currently at Mercedes-Benz. So Seun will tell us more about that, but thank you so much for joining us, Seun.
Thank you, Ife. It's really good to be here. Thank you.
Great. So I will move to Anjana. Anjana is the General Counsel and Privacy Manager at Box of Crayons, a Toronto-based learning and development company. Anjana is dual qualified. She's qualified to practice law in India and in Canada. Anjana has over 10 years of experience in corporate in-house practice. So thank you, Anjana, for being here today.
Thank you, Ife, for that introduction. I'm happy to be here.
Sure, great. Okay, so I'll move to Ariana. Ariana is, she's another very excellent person. She's got over 20 years of professional experience. She's dual qualified in Italy and in Canada. Ariana has lectured at over 30 seminars across India and Italy. She's served, and she's currently serving on several boards. She's currently an associate at Goodfellow and Stewart. So thank you so much, Ariana, for being here, for joining us today.
Good morning. Thank you, Ife.
Sure. Okay, so we'll get right into this. Like I said, we would like for this to be very interactive. So the Q&A box is for you all. If you have any questions, you have any thoughts, please drop it in. Would love to know what you're thinking and would love to help. Again, for those that are just joining, our goal today is for the panelists to tell you their stories and for you to find yourself in this. So I think I would start with Emeka. Emeka, while I was introducing you, I mentioned LPP. So could you just tell us what is LPP? What is this pathway about?
Yeah, so the law practice program is an 8-month, very intensive training program that fulfills the experiential training requirements of the Law Society of Ontario's licensing process. So this program is only available to candidates who wish to be called to the bar in Ontario. There are 2 streams of the LPP. There is an English version of the LPP, which is run by Ryerson University. And there's a French version run by the University of Ottawa. I attended the Ryerson version, and that version runs from, I think, August till the end of April every year. It's really a training program that is divided into 2 components, so to speak. The first part of the LPP is a 4-month online training program that sort of aims to simulate the activities of the day-to-day brick and mortar law office. So I believe you should think of it as being in a full-time employment in a remote law office. while the second part of the LPP, which is what I'm currently doing at the moment, is a work placement that is likened to the traditional articling. So for the first part of the LPP, I like to describe this phase as the learning by doing phase. So for this phase, the cohort, so to speak, is divided up into virtual law firms of 5 to 6 members. And each firm has a firm mentor who is an Ontario-based lawyer. And that person sort of oversees the day-to-day activities of the firm. And on a day-to-day basis for that 4-month period, you would have the chance to collaborate with your colleagues on different virtual files that sort of cover and spans a whole lot of practice areas: criminal law, civil law, corporate law, administrative law. So I think the aim of this first part is to get you to practice law by doing. So you get to work on different files, you get to collaborate with your colleagues, just as if you were in a law firm. And as the day goes by, what happens is that you see that you build proficiency along the line. So some of the common tasks you will normally be assigned, things like doing legal research, opening a file, drafting different hearing documents, drafting retainer letters, and other client letters too. And what I found is that it's actually a very interesting program because the LPP actually hires live actors to play clients, and these clients do a very, very great job at what they do. You'd also get to argue motions and attend different webinars with different subject matter experts during the first part of the LPP. I'm glad to speak in depth when I have the next opportunity into the second part of the LPP, which is the law, which is the placement part of it, which I'm currently undertaking at the moment.
Interesting, thank you. If you could just use maybe the next, say, minute to talk about that second part, that would be very helpful.
Oh, okay, great. So the second part of the LPP is the work placement, just like how you have traditional articles. So what actually happens is during the first part of the LPP provides you with opportunities to apply to different law offices, corporate offices, legal clinics. So they actually provide you with these vacancies and you're meant to apply to these places, and you get shortlisted, you'll actually have to do interviews, and at the end of the day, you are picked to do your placement with that organization. So basically that's what the second part of the LPP is about. It's more like the traditional articling. So you're actually working at your placement office, so to speak.
Interesting, thank you. Thanks for that context, Emeka. I think I would like to hear from Ariana now. And I understand, Emeka, that this LPP and everything we're talking about today is definitely after you have taken your NCA exams that you have been assessed by the the Federation. Great.
Definitely, I should have mentioned that initially too.
Thanks, Emeka. Okay, I think I would like to hear from Ariana here. Ariana is in Alberta. She comes with a totally different perspective. So Ariana, I would like to hear from you. What is, I know that there is an abridgement in Alberta. Do you mind speaking to that? And Ariana, I also know that you had practiced prior to being properly licensed, so in Alberta. So I think there's also some value there when you were permitted to practice prior to being licensed. So if you'd like to speak to that as well, that would be very helpful.
Yeah, how many minutes do you have? 5?
Well, you can do 3 minutes. Let's see where that takes us.
Okay. So regarding a license to practice, so before, when I came here, I had my NCA assessment, and of course I was not very happy with that, but I was totally new to the system. So I basically lost time, in my opinion, because I applied to be for a legal consultant, what is called a foreign legal consultant, which is not a licensed lawyer here. It's a foreign lawyer that is licensed to practice the law of the jurisdiction jurisdiction in which the lawyer is called to the bar. So I was allowed to practice all the Italian laws, and of course, practicing Italian laws in a country, in a foreign country, was a limited task. At the time, I was already working in-house for an Italian company, having a parent company in Italy. But I mean, the boundary of what you can do were very, 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 very slim and limited. Plus, you need to have a bond, and you need to be fully bonded and insured, and that cost me roughly $5,000 a year. So I did it for 1 year, and then I didn't go through the renewal process. For the abridgement, it's been quite a process to go through the exams, because I was from civil law, and you learn as you go. But then once I had my qualification certificate, and I found an articling spot, I applied for abridgement. It's absolutely unstructured in the sense that you have to prepare your case. Basically, you're going to prepare a written document in which you speak for yourself, you explain to the Law Society why you think you shouldn't be doing the whole of the articling, and produce the related documentation. That's what I did, and I had to wait quite a bit, but I knew why, because in the meantime, and reasonably, I think the Law Society here has been amazing with me. They were looking at the CPLED exams, at the result of the CPLED exams. They were very good. So at the end of the day, it took 4 or 5 months to get the abridgement. Then with COVID, everything was delayed. But what the abridgement said is that I had to article only until I had completed my CPLED. Anyways, you don't get around CPLED here, you have to do them, and they're extremely formative, and I would recommend everybody to go through it.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that context.
You're very welcome.
Thank you very much. Interesting. Can we, I think now we've heard from Ontario, we've heard from Alberta. I think it's high time we heard from Sheon, and I know that the program Sheon is undertaking, it cuts across the entire Canada. So Sheon, do you mind just letting us into articling, and let's hear about that.
Sure, thank you. I mean, absolutely every international student lawyer who intends to practice in Canada or get licensed to practice in Canada has to article, except you choose to apply to be exempted. And I think exemptions are currently only available in Ontario. So if you're not choosing to get an exemption, then you have to article. And I mean, I like to think that almost everybody on the call is familiar with the term articling. But if there's just, I mean, for the purpose of anybody who's just starting their journey, it really is just an experiential component to the training and educational requirement that you need to meet to be called or admitted to practice law in Canada. So they're the educational requirements for a typical Canadian who's schooled, it will mean go to law school. For international trained lawyers, it will mean, the NCAs, get assessed by the NCAs, get your foreign educational degrees evaluated, and get the NCA's opinion on what you need to do to be at par with the Canadian law graduate. And then that will take care of the educational requirement. And then there is the experiential requirement, which, for in a loose manner of speaking, is really just tutelage, going into a law firm or an organization. I'm aware that a lot of people are not aware that you can actually article with an organization and not just the traditional law firm. So you go in there for a select predetermined period of time, again, barring abridgement and that kind of conversation. And then you are hopefully learning and observing how things are being done, being tutored by principals, so that eventually when you're done, you have the educational requirement, you have the experiential requirement, and then you're able to get called to the bar. So yeah, that's just what articling is. I believe it is common to all the provinces, again, except you choose to exempt, which is only available in Ontario. And I'm wondering, do you want me to speak to where I'm at, or just introduce what articling is?
Well, it would be nice to know where you are in terms of how the experience has been for you as an articling student. But I wanted to just, just pause you for a moment there and say that, what's the standard period for articling?
So before the pandemic, I believe it was a year, barring abridgements. I believe it was a year. But then with the pandemic and, the economic issues that came with that, and how, already securing an articling position can be challenging. It's not impossible, but it can be challenging. Some people don't even have it challenging, but if we're going to be honest with ourselves, it really can be a bit of, a challenge. So coupling that with the economic challenges, a lot of law firms took a hit. I believe that, the Law Society has decided to offer everybody a sort of abridgement. So I'm aware that in Ontario, by the way, in Ontario, the minimum period, the minimum time period you can spend articling currently, I believe, is 8 months. I'm not sure what it is across the other provinces, but I know there's been sort of like a common abridgment to the articling period.
Right.
So I'll speak quickly to my experience. Again, I'm in Ontario, and, I said that securing an articling position can be challenging. There's no point building castles in the cloud for ourselves. And maybe not go into the reason why that can be challenging, but if we must, in one line, it really essentially is because, at least on the face of it, because there's a system that works, in the legal space in Canada. Students are taken from Canadian law schools and, slotted into articling positions across the firms, which is decent, which is, reasonable. A lot of countries have that kind of arrangement going on, and it just feels like the stakeholders haven't felt the need to, formally accommodate internationally trained lawyers, except for maybe a program like, even LPP, I believe, is available to Canadian law students. But yeah, that's, trying to speak a bit to why getting an articling position can be challenging. And where I was at was that I'd completed my NC exams, and it was taking a bit of time to get an articling position. And then I'm also aware, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm also aware that with a lot of internationally trained lawyers, we typically are not averse to articling. What we want to article, we want to learn. We do, we have practice experience, and we know that each jurisdiction is different, and we know that we cannot almost just stroll in and, expect to pick up stride as though we were in our home or in the jurisdictions where we were called. But I find that the challenge is, when you experience a bit of a stall in, snatching an articling position, and then everybody starts to consider other options. But I'll speak to that okay, Ife.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, Shil, I'll definitely come back to you on, going into a bit of detail on
Sure.
on some of your challenges. But just before that, I would like us to hear from Anjana in terms of exemptions. People love exemptions. So what's the I would like to hear from Anjana, what's the story around exemption, and let's just know what your story is.
Thanks for that, Ife. So my story is I got a complete exemption of articling in Ontario. Like any other internationally trained lawyer, I started doing my NCAs through my GPLLM at U of T. So I had 5 papers to complete, which I completed through my LLM. And then when it came to articling, I started looking out for positions, right? And like Sean said, it's not impossible, but there are a bit of challenges to getting and securing articling positions, and especially when you're coming with a certain experience, right? For example, I had about 10 years of in-house experience where I was basically running end-to-end contracting and working with business teams and doing a lot of good work as an in-house counsel in India. So I figured that I'll start doing some kind of groundwork to understand why they need articling. What is it that we can do to sort of navigate this whole system, right? And then I spoke to a bunch of lawyers who really suggested that I should try the exemption path, because I have considerable experience and I was pretty clear that I wanted to somehow get into an in-house position rather than a position in a law firm. So I feel like articling, if you're not doing an in-house articling, it's more helpful for someone who wants to practice in a law firm, who wants to, you know, have client conversations and all of that. But for me, I was convinced that I should be in-house. So I went for the exemption path, and it's not a complicated process, right? It's not, I won't say it's cheap, but it's cost effective. It's easy to apply. They respond quickly. I mean, the Law Society responds quickly, and you need to have good reference letters from your previous managers in your home country who can vouch for your skills. And you should have been enrolled to the bar in your home country, which was pretty straightforward for all of us. So I think exemption, what directed me towards exemption was the conversations that I had with multiple lawyers, and the fact that I wanted to stay in-house all the time, and how articling was supporting my vision of being in-house all the time. So in fact, I considered the LPP as well, because LPP had a lot of opportunities around staying in-house, right? You will learn more about, you will be placed at a corporation, you will learn more about how in-house work happens. Somehow I felt like I should try the exemption only because I was already working in a company, like my current company, as a contracts manager, and I was managing their contracts. So I felt like I started having those conversations with external counsels, and I sort of felt comfortable in that position, thinking that I can manage it all by myself. And there are so many resources out there that you can make use of, like the CBA and OBA that runs free programs for in-house counsels. You can just pop in and you know, start learning all by yourself about how you practice as an in-house counsel. So that sort of prompted me to do the exemption.
Right. Thanks a lot, Anjana. I want to take you up on some of the things that you had said.
Yeah,
so
sure.
I hear you say that the reason why you decided to opt for an exemption is you had conversations with experienced people, and the fact that you had very good experience from back home in India, you thought you could actually get an exemption and thrive and do well. Let me just ask, do you think there are challenges for because I hear it a lot of times, some people just jump in and say, you know what, I want an exemption. I want an exemption. So what are there challenges for some people when they opt for exemptions, when, you know, they are not the right candidates for exemption? What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ife. From my perspective, so what I explained so far was my story. So from my perspective, I think there are definitely challenges in taking up a new in-house position as a newly certified lawyer in Canada, because employment laws are different. There are a lot of differences even between two common law jurisdictions, right? There is a bit of a learning curve in all the kind of work that you do. Privacy laws are different. There needs to be good external counsel support for you to even understand and navigate through some of these practice areas within the in-house team. For me, the major chunk of work was contracts, which I managed back home, and there's not, I won't say that it's the same, but it's predominantly the same for us to navigate. And we can, as long as you have good external counsel support, you should be able to navigate some of those pieces. My biggest challenge when I moved as an in-house counsel was not knowing what I was doing was right or wrong. Right. As much as I was confident about contracts, I was sort of constantly looking for validation. So I networked and started talking to other in-house counsels to ask about what they would do on a peer-to-peer basis or on a networking basis, right? And if you ask help, people really help you.
Right.
So I'm not completely saying there won't be challenges. There are challenges, and you as a person should know what are your strengths and weaknesses for you to decide which licensing path works for you.
Absolutely. Thanks for that, Anjana. And I'd like to hear from Emeka. Emeka, you spoke to some of the very, I think, invaluable benefits, very great benefits of the LPP program. I know that you might have encountered some challenges as well. Do you want to speak to some of the challenges that people encounter with respect to the LPP program?
Okay, so for me, I think one particular challenge, and I don't know if this is appropriately described as a challenge, is the fact that the work placement part of the LPP only lasts for 4 months. Sometimes 4 months is not just enough time. It goes with the bat of an eyelid. So I think it's really a short period to be able to sort of distinguish yourself in the workplace. The first maybe 1 month, you're just trying to settle into that role. You're trying to meet your colleagues. You're trying to catch up on, like my organization, BMO, we had to do a whole lot of, because it's in the financial services sector, so there's a whole lot of training on anti-money laundering and different aspects of financial regulation. So just doing all that and trying to settle into the role, you find that that you've indeed spent at least close to 3 weeks to a month just settling in, and you have maybe 3 months just to sort of grow into that role, which I believe in most cases, it's indeed a short period of time. But apart from that, my colleagues were very welcoming. They helped me really settle in fast. And one thing, and this was a question in the chat, there is the opportunity to be hired back at the end of the day, depending on your performance and if the particular employer has the budget to sort of take you in at that point in time. So for me, I think that for me is one of the biggest challenges I faced in the LPP.
Thanks, Emeka. Let me just put a follow-up question to that. Are there, when you do your first 4 months, does the Ryerson University support you to get roles for the corporate support, the practical support in companies and all that? Does the university support you to get those roles?
Absolutely. And I think for me, that was one of the major attractions of going the LPP route. The folks at Ryerson actually provide you with a list of employers who have available vacancies to take in LPP candidates. So this list is uploaded on your portal. You go in, you look at roles that sort of match your particular skill sets. Then after that, you apply to these roles. And when you're applying, the LPP provides great support. They help you with reviewing your resume. They also help you by scheduling mock interviews with members of the LPP alumni, which I believe is over 1,000 strong now. The LPP started in 2014, I believe. So for me, those were the two key things they provided. They actually provided, they provide you with a list of employers who are willing to take LPP candidates and support along the way as you conduct your interviews or conduct different outreaches, trying to reach out to other employers who may not be on that list. So although the LPP does not guarantee you a placement, but I think the record over the years speaks for itself. I think there has been close to a near perfect record with placements, I think at 98% at the last time I checked.
Great. Thanks for that, Emeka. Ariana, I don't know if you can just give us just let us into the abridgement world in Alberta, and if you could speak to some of the challenges that people have maybe now as compared to when you did you got your abridgement and your licensing sorted. What are the issues that people encounter?
Okay, so as for the abridgement, I did it actually 1 year ago, so I don't think it's changed a lot. I did it in the fall 2019. I submitted that. The challenge is, I mean, Alberta is way more conservative than Ontario. There are less internationally trained lawyers, and it is it is quite firm on the fact that what was called CPLED last year, this year they changed the name, but I mean, it's a preparatory course in lieu of the bar exam, has to be done by everybody. It's really rare that, I don't think it's even possible to have an article in under 6 months. As I said, mine at the end of the day would have been 6 months, because that's the duration of the CPLED exams if you pass them all at the first attempt without having to repeat and go to the late session. But at the end of the day, I think it's really impossible to go under the 6 months time. And the challenge is that when you apply, you don't really know what to say. It's not that they give you a template and they give you some background information of what they want to know. It's really you building your case and telling them why you don't think you have to article for a full time. I was pretty much keen on what I was presenting. I don't like shortcuts in my life. We have a huge responsibility when we advise our clients, whether you're in-house or external counsel. The fact that you come and do a job in a country that is not the country where you're born and raised makes this liability double. So let's be serious. You need to go through some preparatory work before you're put out there in signing and giving and providing advice. So at the end of the day, I had 20 years of experience when I applied for abridgement, and I had work in India, I had work in Middle East, I had work a little bit in UK and done international transaction all over. So I knew I had the credentials to do that, but it's not something that in Alberta is very much granted very often. If for international trade lawyers that come from civil law countries, I would say the first challenge starts with the exams because it's more costly for us. I was given 9 exams, and I was told that 5 of them I would have to challenge within a university program. Now, the university program in Alberta, there were none. I had to go back to university. So my first response is that you have to go back 3 years to university. And my first reply has been, I was teaching a university. I was teaching an MBA. In an international MBA program. So I'm not going back to university, in as much as humble I've always been. And it's been a long dialogue with Federation of Law Societies to try to find out something. LLM, LLP, they were all in Ontario, few of them in British Columbia, but I would say all of them in Ontario, and they couldn't move. Also, it cost $20,000 to $50,000, and I couldn't leave my family and move elsewhere. So I was almost to give up. Then I found myself, you guys have to do your homework. Don't wait for someone else to do it for you. I found this program at UBC Law School that I think it's, along with Osgood University, one of the few that allows you to challenge exams out of an LLM program. And I started with 2, and the results were so high that I reapplied back again. And they said, okay, now you can challenge as NCA exams as all common law lawyers do. And that, I could save like $15,000 with 3 exams. I was allowed to challenge as NCA exams. So the challenges are there throughout the path. It takes time. It's time consuming for civil lawyers more than for common law, for sure, for a reason. But you need to do your homework. You need to research, and you need to, you know what's the best path for yourself. Everybody is different, and so it's like document yourself, but then put yourself in front of a computer, starts writing and bug people and bug for information, then you will find a solution.
Thank you very much for that. I think that's very useful, having to do the groundwork yourself. Sheon, you were talking about some challenges, and I know that, I'm asking you this question now because I know that lots of people have so many questions about articling. They've got challenges. Some of them have not even applied at all, but the information out there is daunting in terms of the articling positions and all that. From your perspective, and coming from, based on your own story, was there a time you got to a breaking point? What is this whole issue about getting articling positions? Do we have more articling positions? And I'm speaking to something that someone mentioned in the chat room. I think that is Aditya. Do we have more articling positions in some provinces more than others? What's your take on that?
Thank you. I mean, I saw that question. It piques my attention as well because funnily, I moved from Alberta to Ontario as well. I mean, I must say that I moved for personal reasons, but really it does appear to me that, like Ariana was saying, Ontario is a bigger and it's a more commercially charged province, in my opinion. And there are probably statistics to show for that. So it probably is logical or reasonable that Ontario is a better market, in terms of employment generally, and then articling specifically as well compared to, other provinces or smaller provinces. But yeah, I had challenges. I mean, I'd say there's no point. The purpose of this call is not to just build castles in the cloud for ourselves. Is to say that what it is and what we can do to advance. I got a breaking point. I was 2 seconds from considering an exemption. And I mean, I say that not to say that there's anything wrong with getting an exemption. I mean, if you listen carefully to Anjana's story, you'd realize that, exemptions are the candidates that it suits. It's the best fit candidates for exemptions. But I was very involved in very active litigation. I was in court in Nigeria almost every other day, and I wanted to make a switch. I made a career decision to go in-house. And I knew that I needed that, I needed to learn, make my mistakes whilst the stakes were not too high. And I believe those are some of the things that articling articling offers you. You learn, you make your mistakes when, your ink, or rather your signature is not wet ink yet, right? So I knew I needed to article, but of course it was a bit of a challenge. There was a bit of a stretch. I really did hit a breaking point, before this showed up. And I'll speak really quickly to that because I see another question in the chat room saying, what did you do to get your articling position, saying that, it's not a traditional route. And what I'd say to that, honestly, in my opinion, is that, I did something differently in terms of how I'd been applying. And yeah, there's something to be said, a lot to be said for networking and trying to get articles. But then, networking didn't get me my articling position, right? I saw a posting online and I applied, but then I paid very careful attention to my application package. And for me, if that's all anybody takes after this call, I feel like it's worth my time. It's challenging to get an articling position, but it's absolutely very possible to pick and choose, to decide I'd like to article in a law firm and get that, or I'd like to article in a corporation and get that. We just need to keep pushing and then do things in a way that we get results. So I paid very close attention to my application package, in a way that at the time I was done looking at my resume and my cover letter, I said to myself, if I was the recruiting officer, thrown into a pool of applications for this role, I would call myself and offer myself an interview, slot, right? And then very importantly as well is, because the first stage is getting the interview, the invite to interview, but very important is how to scale through the interviews. And, Emeka said, I also believe that it's one of the perks of the LPP program, because I find that international trained lawyers are, almost in an uphill battle with Canadian law graduates, because the law graduates have the help of, I'm not sure what it's called, but they have, like human resource, application, employment, interview prep, resume putting together help as part of the services that the unis would offer, same as the LPP. But for us, everything is self-study, quote unquote, like the NCs. We really have to, do the work, get help, you need to, but absolutely, you can absolutely secure an articling position. So yeah, back to the interview. I got an invite for the interview, and it was a sink or float moment for me, and then we really just need to shine. We need to thrive, because we're coming on that interview to not as a fresh out of law school, Canadian law school graduate. you're saying that you're an internship trained lawyer, you have some experience, that needs to shine. You know, you need to put your best foot forward. Like I said, you need to leave that call knowing that there's absolutely no way you won't get a call back from the interviewer or from the employer, you know, offering you the job, the offer, right? And that was it for me. I think that was those were the things I did differently. And there is a lot to be said for networking, but personally, I didn't get my offer from networking, right? I got it from just applying and, you know, interviewing, and, you know, it turned out great.
Awesome, awesome. I'm going to just speak to, someone asked a question and said, what any tips on preparing for articling interviews? Someone also asked another question around that. And Ariana sent a message, but I think that message was sent directly to me in error. And she just says, you know, work on your resume, do volunteering, go ahead until you find one. And Shane has also said, yes, networking is good, but you know, we all know what our strengths are. We know what our weaknesses are. You should build on your strengths. So if you know that your strength is in coming up with, you know, a very good resume, coming up with a very good application package, then, you know, focus on that. You can do other things, but focus on what makes you that special person. Emeka, just a quick question for you. Some people have asked questions around the LPP program, whether it can be funded by OSAP. Do you want to speak to that?
I think this is a question I didn't really consider, because I wouldn't want to hazard a guess, but I don't think it can be OSAP funded. But if anybody out there has contrary information, you can quickly correct me. But I don't think it's OSAP funded. We had to pay, I think, $2,800 plus tax to participate in the LPP program. And I think it's the same for articling. I'm not sure about that. But as I said, I don't think it's OSAP funded, so to speak.
Right. Right. Let me ask you, Anjana, what would be that thing that you would say to any internationally trained lawyer that is just coming in and is so confused and kind of overwhelmed, maybe after passing all the NCA exams? What would you say to that person?
I would definitely say that you should always, and it's not possible in all cases, but you should always know at one point or the other where you want to end up, right? For me, if I had, so I definitely want to note here that I tried for articling positions. In fact, I got a couple of articling positions that were not corporate commercial, that were more from a civil litigation and a criminal law perspective. But is that what I wanted, was the question that I asked myself. I didn't want to get into criminal law practice. I didn't want to get into civil litigation practice. And therefore, I chose not to go that route. So the one thing that I really would tell that person is to really dig deep and know what they want and where they want to end up. If it's an in-house position, I would in fact think that if they want to learn, if they want to first learn under somebody's supervision, I would consider doing the LPP. Even if you don't want to do the exemption, but you really want hands-on experience, I would consider, I would suggest that they do the LPP, because you get the opportunity to work with companies. And if you have a articling supervisor who's able to guide you as an in-house articling student, that's an option that you can, explore. But you should know that you want to be in-house at that point of time.
Right.
That's the advice that I would give. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Anjana. And I can totally relate with that, because, it's important that you ask yourself that question: what exactly is my goal? What exactly is my goal? Do I want to practice? Do I want to go to court? Do I want to work as an in-house counsel? Do I want to go the compliance route? What exactly do I want? And that helps to choose what licensing pathway really works. So thank you so much for that, Anjana. Ariana, let me come back to you very quickly and take some out of your wealth of experience right there. There are a couple of people asking so many questions about what they can do, how the abridgement program is, and all of that. But what I would like you to speak to is you had it, like you said, it was kind of tough when you started this journey, given that you had lots of experience and you had to kind of start all over again in terms of having to get licensed and all that. What would you say to someone who has, you know, a lot of experience, has been maybe settled in their own jurisdiction, and then they come to Canada and they have to go that route? Maybe they're coming from a civil law jurisdiction, or maybe common law or whatever. What would you say to that person?
Yeah, I think the best advice that I can say is is being absolutely transparent and honest. So it's difficult. Don't think that you come here and they open the doors to you. Had someone told me this, I would have probably saved a couple of years of my time. If you're familiar with the process of selling and buying a home, seller and buyer fix a price, and then there is always an inspection. And during the inspection, there is the buyer who tries to say, this is deficient, give me, bring down the price and this and that. This is the same that happens here. The problem, I always say, problems are not the exams. Problems are not, if you study, you pass them. Problem is not finding an article position. If you want, you find it. Don't stick only to major law firm, and just, try to be reasonable. The problem is what they call Canadian experience. So that's a way to balance the fact that international trained lawyers have a dual experience, and the dual experience costs money and is precious. If you have it, if you don't have it, don't think that you come here and just because you're graduating in a foreign country and maybe you have a couple of years of license, then you're ahead of the others. I don't think so. So what you have gained in your professional life is what you will have to market over here. So market yourself very well. Be conscious of what you have less than others, but what you have more than others, and be extremely realistic. It takes time and efforts. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's nothing easier than when you are in court representing your client, when you have to explain to your client that the case is not so strong as the client believes, or when you have to negotiate through a long and complicated transaction. So, I mean, we are lawyers. We have to be used to be tough and to go through difficulties. It's nothing new over here. It's just, don't think that just because you are dually qualified, you have more chances than others. This is a closed market still.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that, Ariane. Emeka, just to take some thought from you on that one thing that you're going to say to anyone who is looking to enroll for the LPP program or is thinking about the options, what would you say to that person?
So I would say, irrespective of what path you choose to go down at the end of the day, you will get a lot of leverage by networking. Network widely, reach out to people in your networks. There are other people who are going through this program just like you. Try to reach out with them. I think you must have allies on your side. You must have people rooting for you during this journey, because sometimes it's going to get difficult. Sometimes you would wish you packed your bags and went back home. But when you have people in your corner, when you have people sort of cheering you on, I think it makes the journey easier. If you have none of those people, please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. And also, as a final note, I would say, because of the length of time it takes to undergo this whole process, I would say you should take advantage of the fact now that the NCAs and at least the licensing exams for Ontario are now online. So you can do these exams without physically being in Canada. Take advantage of that fact. Don't wait till you get here to try to attempt these examinations.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Emeka. And I just want to say we've got loads of questions rolling in. What I would just say is that a lot of those questions we may not be able to answer because our time is far spent. But what we can say, and just like Emeka said, you can connect with all of the panelists, every one of us here. There are some questions that are with respect that are in relation to the licensing. There are some questions that are in relation to, just starting afresh and everything. So you can always reach out to every one of us here on LinkedIn. And if you have those questions, I know everyone here is very busy, but as they have time, we can reach out to you and respond to your questions. I would also say that you can send emails to the ITL network. I don't know, Kenny, if you could just put the email of the ITL network in the chat room, so that some of the questions that were not answered, they can ask by email, and I'm sure we can see what we will see what we can do about that. Thank you so much, Sheol. Thank you, Emeka. Thank you, Anjana. Thank you, Ariana. This has been very helpful. It's been insightful, and I bet that everyone here has taken more than one or two things already, and they're taking that away. We are unable to answer all of your questions, definitely, but you have something to work with. You have something to go back and research on, which is very useful. So thank you all so much for joining me here in the room. I'll invite Kenny to give a vote of thanks.
Wow, thanks. Thanks a lot, Ife. I have personally learned a lot from our speakers today. I'll say special thanks to all our speakers today for the important insights shared to all our participants. We are grateful that you took the time out of your busy schedules to join us today. We had over 100 participants join us live here on Zoom, and several others connected to us to the events via Facebook. And I also like to appreciate our quintessential moderator for a great job well done. Thank you so much, Ife. We reached out to you to moderate this event and you answered our call. We are indeed grateful. I also like to thank our 2021 DE&I sponsors, Gowling WLG Canada, for supporting this event. To all our participants, thank you for joining us today. We hope you've learned a great deal. And if we're unable to get to your questions, we do hope that we have other opportunities in the future to chat about them. Please remember to follow us on all our social media channels, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Twitter. The name is the ITL Network on all channels. So follow us for more updates. On behalf of the entire ITL Network team, I'd like to say thank you to everyone, and I wish you all a wonderful weekend. Bye for now.